All right, let's talk about a book that absolutely turned the world of personal finance on its head for millions of people. Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad. This thing is part how-to guide, part personal memoir, and yeah, part total firestorm of controversy. So we're going to pull back the curtain on this book that promises the keys to the kingdom of financial freedom and see what's really there. This right here, this is the question that kicks the whole thing off. It's meant to stop you dead in your tracks. I mean, think about the advice we always hear. Go to a good school, get a safe job, save your money, and whatever you do, stay out of debt. Kiyosaki's big argument, that entire playbook, it isn't designed to make you rich. It's designed to keep you stuck in the middle.
So how does he get this idea across? He frames his entire philosophy through a really simple but incredibly powerful story. It all comes down to a tale of his two fathers who gave him completely opposite advice about money and life.
And this is the core of it all. You've got his poor dad, that was his actual father, a super smart guy with a PhD who worked for the government. Then you had his rich dad, who was his best friend's dad, an entrepreneur who dropped out of school. So for Kiyosaki, it wasn't just about getting advice. It was like having two different coaches screaming two totally different playbooks at him. He had to figure out which game he wanted to win. And man, what a difference in those playbooks. His poor dad would say stuff like, the love of money is the root of all evil. But his rich dad, he'd say, no, the lack of money is the root of all evil. Poor dad's advice was, study hard so you can find a good company to work for. Rich dad's was, study hard so you can find a good company to buy. You see, it's a fundamental clash of mindsets. So, okay, if you want to break free from that poor dad way of thinking, how do you actually do it? Well, Kiyosaki lays out a few big ideas that he says are the absolute keys to financial freedom. He has a name for this endless loop that so many people are stuck in, the rat race. He says it's a life run by two big emotions. Number one, the fear of not having enough money to pay your bills. And number two, the greed that kicks in when you get a bigger paycheck. You get a raise, so you buy a nicer car or a bigger house. And suddenly, the trop just gets bigger. To get out of that race, Kiyosaki says there's really only one rule you have to get, but it's everything. It's deceptively simple. You have to know the difference between an asset and a liability. That's it. An asset puts money in your pocket. A liability takes money out of your pocket. The rich, he says, spend their lives buying assets. The rest of us, we spend our lives buying liabilities that we think are assets. To help us understand how people make money and why it's so important where it comes from, he introduces this idea called the Cashflow Quadrant. It basically sorts everyone into 4 categories based on how they earn their income. Let's walk through it real quick. First up, you've got the E quadrant. E is for employee. This is the traditional path most of us are taught. The main driver here is security. You trade your time for a reliable paycheck, and you work inside a system that somebody else built. Next, we have the S quadrant. S is for self-employed or small business owner. These are the people who want to be their own boss, right? They value their independence, they're the experts. But here's the catch. Often, they don't really own a business. They own a job. If they take a vacation, the income stops cold. Okay, now we're crossing over to the side where Kiyosaki says real wealth is built. The B quadrant is for business owner. And the key difference is this. You own a system, and you have people who work in that system for you. The classic test is, a true B quadrant owner could walk away from their business for a whole year, come back and find it's doing even better than when they left. And finally, the last quadrant, the I for investor. This is the goal. This is where your money starts making money for you. Your money essentially becomes your employee, and it works for you 24/7. According to Rich Dad, this is the playground of the rich, and it's the ultimate path to true wealth. So, the million-dollar question is, how in the world do you get from the E and S side over to the B and I side of that quadrant? Well, Kiyosaki lays out a few specific strategies that he says the rich use to build up their assets way faster than everybody else. The playbook really has 3 core moves. First, mind your own business. What he means is your day job pays the bills, sure, but your real business is what you do after hours to build your asset column. Second, use corporations. They act like a legal shield for your assets and let you play the tax game way more effectively. And third, this is the one that gets everyone talking. Learn how to leverage debt. Yeah, this one can be a real mind bender. Most of us are taught our whole lives that all debt is bad. Just avoid it. But Rich Dad's lesson was that there's good debt and there's bad debt. Bad debt is when you borrow money to buy liabilities. Think a fancy car you can't afford or a big screen TV. Good debt, on the other hand, is when you borrow money to buy an asset, something that makes you money, like a rental property where the tenant's rent pays the mortgage and then some. So just how powerful can good debt be? Well, check out this number. Instead of taking all your cash and buying one single property, the rich dad strategy says to use that same cash as a down payment on, say, 5 properties. By using the bank's money or leverage to control way more assets, Kiyosaki says you can basically double your return on investment. That, in a nutshell, is the power of leverage. Now, these concepts are undeniably powerful. They've influenced millions of people. But the story doesn't end there. To really understand the book, you also have to look at the man who wrote it. The advice is definitely compelling, but one of the key lessons of financial literacy is to do your homework on the person who's selling you the advice. And when you start to dig into the story of Robert Kiyosaki himself, well, that's where the story gets pretty complicated. The reality check is pretty jarring. For starters, Rich Dad himself, it's now widely believed he was never a real person, but more of a composite character, a parable. On top of that, Kiyosaki's own business history has hit some major bumps, including one of his companies filing for bankruptcy back in 2012. And those famous seminars have faced really serious legal challenges, including class action lawsuits and documentaries alleging they're just high-pressure sales funnels for super expensive courses. And critics jump all over this first point. The book is sold as this true story, right? But its main character, the wise mentor, isn't real. For a lot of people, that makes them question the authenticity of the whole entire thing. And this really points to the other huge criticism, that Robert Kiyosaki's most profitable asset isn't actually his real estate portfolio. It's the Rich Dad brand. The argument is that he got rich by selling the dream of getting rich, through the books, the board games, and especially those pricey seminars. So, how do you square all this? You've got these paradigm-shifting ideas on one side, and this really controversial reality of the author on the other. Let's try to make sense of the book's overall legacy. Look, on one hand, you just can't deny its impact. This book is a powerful mindset shifter. It's introduced millions of people to basic but crucial ideas like assets versus liabilities and the goal of financial independence. It really challenges the status quo. But on the other hand, the advice is often super high level, without a lot of specific, here's what to do next steps. The author's personal history raises a lot of red flags, and some of the strategies he promotes, like using tons of debt, can be extremely risky, especially for a beginner. In the end, it really all boils down to this one compelling question. Is Rich Dad Poor Dad the masterwork of a financial guru who's sharing the real secrets to wealth? Or is it the creation of a marketing genius who built a massive empire by selling a modern-day financial fable? And honestly, that's a question every single reader has to answer for themselves.